Welcome to the Big Book Roundtable in the RICO 12 family of recovery resources targeted at people from all backgrounds, faiths, and places dealing with addictions of all varieties. RICO 12 is also a resource for the loved ones of addict. I'm Justin B., a child of an all-powerful and all-loving God and a multidisciplinary addict. I mess that up every week, but I'm good with it. Living in miraculous recovery, and am blessed to be the moderator of this roundtable. I'm joined by David G. and Nikki M. The three of us are living the miracle of recovery one day at a time. And we're just enjoying this as we strive to live the principles as we find them in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'll quickly further introduce myself and then get to our panelists. I'm the steward of the RICO 12 family of recovery resources, and what an amazing privilege that is. I'm really grateful for it. RICO 12 is currently a family of podcasts. We have our flagship speaker meeting podcast that we record every Friday, RICO 12 Shares, which is an open meeting where anybody can record a share anytime, noodle it out with Nikki M. And this project, the Big Book Roundtable. More resources are coming down the pipeline. This is an adventure. We're excited about it. David, if you wouldn't mind taking just a minute, introducing yourself.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody. My name is David G. I am an alcoholic and an addict of many sorts. I'm grateful for a recovery date in Alcoholics Anonymous of August 8th, 1994, an emotional recovery date in Sexaholics Anonymous of October 1st, by the way, 2019. So today is the day number 4 there. So really grateful to be here, living in Oklahoma, but currently in Dallas, Texas tonight. Good to be here. Thanks, Justin, for your service.
Awesome. Happy birthday, David. That's awesome. I had forgotten that today was your anniversary of your sobriety or your emotional sobriety recovery date in SA. That's awesome. Happy birthday to you. Nikki, why don't you take a minute and introduce yourself too?
Hi, everybody. I'm Nikki M., and I'm a grateful member of this beautiful fellowship. And yes, happy re-birthday. And that's what I've got to do every day here. I've got to recreate my life through working the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I suffer the disease of alcoholism. And I'm just so grateful to have a daily reprieve and be back at this virtual, is that what we call it? A virtual roundtable with me and just two spearheads of God's ever advancing creation. It's a great day to be alive at this table. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Nikki. And thank you, David. We're excited to be here together in this roundtable, this virtual roundtable. And we're going to jump right into the next part of the Big Book where we left off last time. We are starting the doctor's opinion, which is a fantastic and powerful chapter that is in the Roman numerals still of the Big Book. So a lot of times people kind of skip through this when they don't know really what is involved in what's in the precursors of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I know when I'm reading a book, I'll often skip all of the Roman numerals and just go to page 1. But man, we're getting into so much meat here, and I know that in the doctor's opinion, there's a lot of meat in here. So everybody get out your Big Book, get out a pen, paper, highlighter, whatever. Let's go swimming here through the doctor's opinion. I'm going to start on page XXV, that's Roman numeral 25, and we will read through the first letter in the doctor's opinion. All right, here we go. The doctor's opinion. We of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the reader will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery described in this book. Convincing testimony must surely come from medical men who have had experience with the sufferings of our members and have witnessed our return to health. A well-known doctor, chief physician at a nationally prominent hospital specializing in alcoholic and drug addiction, gave Alcoholics Anonymous this letter. To whom it may concern, I have specialized in the treatment of alcoholism for many years. In late 1934, I attended a patient who, though he had been a competent businessman of good earning capacity, was an alcoholic of a type I had come to regard as hopeless. In the course of this third treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery. As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. This has become the basis of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. This man and over 100 others appear to have recovered. I personally know scores of cases who are of the type with whom other methods had failed completely. These facts appear to be of extreme medical importance because of the extraordinary possibilities of rapid growth inherent in this group. They may mark a new epoch in the annals of alcoholism. These men may well have a remedy for thousands of such men, of such situations. You may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves. Very truly yours, William D. Silkworth, MD. All right. So this first letter, and I know there's a lot of history behind this, but let's get into this and talk a little bit about it. David, what are some of your insights that you pull out of this first reading as we go through this?
Well, thank you, Justin, and thank you for your service as always. And there are many, and you're right, there is just a ton of history laid out in this that unless you read the other literature of Alcoholics Anonymous and the different conference-approved books, you will never find just by reading, with the naked eye. And so this was a little man who in the 1920s, our country went through a Great Depression, and he, like everybody else, lost a lot of stock. And so he was offered a job at Towns Hospital in New York City, making $40 a week plus room and board. Now, that's quite a bit of money in those days. But he would watch us come in, and he would watch us in the way that we would be just completely beat down and hopeless. And he would give us the best medical attention of that day. He would release us back out on the street. And then after some time, we'd show up again, and he began to notice there's something different about these guys. He says they're completely okay, the same as you and I, whenever they leave from here. But when they get out there, their mind tells them that it's okay to do whatever it is they do. And once they do that, then there's something within them that won't allow them to stop. And he looked at his staff, and from the books that I've read, he said, when you guys take a drink of alcohol, you're able to get drunk or whatever you do, and then you're back to work the next morning like nothing ever. And that's not the case with these guys. So there's something more than mental. It's physical with these. And in the very first paragraph you read, it said, we believe that the reader, and it took me a while to realize that's me, will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery described in the book. So it tells me right there where the plan of recovery is described. Now, I know we share about it in the fellowship a lot, Experience, Strength, and Hope, but if I want the plan of recovery as it is described, it's in the book. And then our very first promise in the next, convincing testimony must surely come from medical men who have had experience, not just knowledge, but experience with the suffering of our members. And here's our promise: have witnessed our return to health, mental, physical. That's a beautiful promise. And so he went on to give this letter. And if you look at to whom it may concern, you see the word I. See, it doesn't say we. It will shortly here, but it doesn't say that now. So this is his opinion. This is what he thought in those days. We know now that it's a medical fact. Now, Bill wanted Henry Ford to write the first chapter in the book. He did. But everybody else was like, no, it needs to be approved by a doctor. And so, of course, it had to be Silkworth because he was the man behind the scenes throughout this whole deal. So that's how his story ended up in the very front of the book. Now, this is the only chapter in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous that was not written by an alcoholic, the only chapter. And so there's so much you read here. In the course of his third treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery as part, and that's the key word, as part of his rehabilitation. He commenced to present these conceptions to others. I think sometimes we get so caught up and we got to carry the message. We got to. That's only part of this. That's only a small part. It's a very big, small part, but it's only a part. And so if I want to look at the bottom paragraph there that kicks off, it says these facts. Well, I want to know what these facts are. One is found up where it says in 34, I attended a patient. Now that last sentence says, of good earning capacity of an alcoholic was a type I'd come to regard as hopeless. So in this man's hospital, you had 3 chances to come in, sober up, find this experience he's going to talk about. And if you didn't do that with the family's consent, he would send you to upstate New York to a wet brain clinic, and you would never be allowed to return to society again. And this is where Bill was headed whenever this miracle happened for him. The second fact is he acquired certain ideas concerning the possible means of recovery. And the third fact is that he must do likewise with still others. This has become the basis of the rapidly growing fellowship. So there's so much here. And we could talk for hours about it, but it's, I know today 29 years later that I could sit here right now and wash my hands in a bowl of liquor, hold pills, whatever it is, and it absolutely would not hurt me. But if I put that in my mouth and I swallow it down into my body, I promise you something's going to happen to me that don't happen to normal people. I'm going to break out in a run, and I'm going to go with this stuff forever. So as long as I never put it in, I will never trigger the physical allergy. But I have another problem. Once I get away from it, I've got a mind that tells me, hey, it's okay. It's okay. It's not going to be this way. So I'm trapped two ways, mental and physical, and he's definitely going to deal with it. It was him doing all the talking up to this point. Now, what you're about to read next, this is going to be Bill talking. So you will see him go back and forth here, back and forth. So anyway, thank you for letting me share. I'm ready to hear. Thank you, Justin.
Yeah, thank you, David. I appreciate the specification of those facts. That really opened my eyes to a few things. Nikki, why don't you tell us a few things that stuck out to you in that reading?
Thank you, Justin, and thank you, David. And I know, Justin, your brains and mine are always exploding when we're at the table with David G, because I learned so much. And if you're just new joining us, we're working out of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous 4th edition, and it's never ending. It really is. I never stop learning. But, I have lots of notes all over my book. I've been in this particular copy of this book for 7 years, and it's falling apart. And it is a plan for recovery. And that's what it says, a plan for recovery. But I love what it says. The doctor's opinion talks about the disease of alcoholism. And, in this book, we'll read how it's a family disease. And, I suffer the disease of alcoholism without picking up a drink. And what does that look like for people who have an allergy of the body? It's what you and I were talking about, Justin. It's funny. I thought about that first crunchy bite. Remember? And of course, obviously I took a bite of something crunchy, and that's what made me think of you, because you had said, Nikki, I've abstained from that because once I start, I can't stop. What about the first text, the first scroll, the first kiss, the first thought, it goes real deep and dark in the disease of alcoholism, because it talks about, he specializes in this treatment, which is a family disease. And so, when it says, to whom it may concern, my note above there says anyone and everyone, because that's what this book really is about. When we're going to read, it says to men, a fellowship of men and their families. And there's women there too, women and their families, and it recovered from what? From a seemingly fake news state of mind and body. And, David went over the history of it, and I have my note out where it says, and thank you, David, I circled part. I didn't have that, that word highlighted, and just like it is only part, because I've relied heavy on step 1. And, I love to sponsor. I'm a little sponsor slut. So I was like sponsoring anyone I can get my hands on. I did no seeking God, step 11. I did no step 6 and 7. I rarely looked at my inventory because I was slipping back into only working a 1 and 12-step program. It's an 11-step program, all 12 steps every day. But it really is. I love what it says here. Like, I must do these things, which is it's a pay it forward program. That's really what this is about for me. I mean, I have to have a testimony and be in what was said here, their experience, through their experience. I can't speak of someone else's. And it talks about it at the end of the letter on the next page on xxvi, where it says, the doctor says you can rely absolutely 100% on anything they say about themselves. When I'm speaking about my disease, my line out, I speak from I statements. This is my experience, strength, and hope. Because as we talked about, especially at the beginning when we were doing this, is that, we put ourselves into this story. How can Bill W., this guy, relate to me, anyone at home? I'm a woman and I don't look like Bill. You guys see me. I don't look like Bill W., but I can relate to everything here. And a lot of the time that's because of this disease. What they say is, the disease of alcoholism. And I suffer this, and my whole family has. It doesn't stop when the drink gets put down. That's when the problem really starts to to expand. So thank you so much for letting me share my experience, strength, and hope on that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nikki. And I want to jump just a little bit more into this from my perspective. Today, right before this recording, I got a call from somebody who I had never spoken with about addiction, about recovery. It was a guy who was dying. I know him casually through social stuff, and he reached out to me because he knows that I work recovery. He knows that I do this, and the promises here, or the facts here, was an alcoholic of the type I had come to regard as hopeless. We read in other places in the Big Book that it's best that somebody be at their bottom. That's when there's the most hope for recovery, when they're the most hopeless, because I have burned every bridge that I can think of. I don't know anything else. I don't know any other solution. So I'm more open to hearing another person's solution. And then the third fact from those three facts, this man, that they must do likewise with still others. When I talked with this guy today, for those about 15 minutes before this call, I shared what works for me, which is when all else fails, work with another alcoholic saves the day. And it kind of blew him away. And I let him know at the beginning that it was going to be an abbreviated conversation because I had another appointment, but we're going to pick it up again. But man, just so much right there in those facts just scream out to me today from my own experience, strength, and hope. All right. So I'd like to ask a couple of follow-up questions of each of you here. David, you mentioned, and it was reiterated again, part of our rehabilitation. David, why don't you dive a little bit deeper there? Talk to us about some of the other parts that fit in with this major and important part, but what are some of the other important parts?
Well, absolutely, unity would be the first one. Without unity, it's hopeless. If I would have came into a room and there would have been nobody there to, one, share experience, strength, and hope with me and unify with me because of the problem that I suffered from at that time, which was self. I thought it was alcohol, drugs, lust, everything else, but it was self-ism, as Nikki describes it. Then it would have been, it just would not have been as remarkable as it turned out to be. Now, if you remember in the foreword to the second edition on page XIX, and I think that's Roman numeral 29, if I'm not mistaken, the very last full paragraph, the last sentence says, today the remarkable unity of AA is one, keyword, one of the greatest assets that our society has. So that's another part. The other part, obviously, is going to be service. I mean, once we've had this awakening, this miracle of recovery happen for us, then I think it's more than just our duty. I think it's our obligation to help our brothers to be relieved of the chains. So there's three areas. There's unity, there's recovery, and then there's service. One without the other it's like a two-legged stool. Eventually it's going to fall. And so anytime that I'm having trouble in my life, no matter what that may be, with whatever situation, I can go back to that triangle with the circle around it. It's unity, recovery, and service. And I can look at each one of those and I can see, okay, am I making enough meetings? Am I into the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous with another alcoholic or with someone that's into it with me? And if I can answer yes to that, then the service part of that's complete. The circle means wholeness. But if I'm having trouble in any area of life, it may not have anything to do with chemicals or relationships or any of that. One of those areas are out of whack. I can guarantee you it is. So for me, this is only part of our rehabilitation, is to present our conception to other alcoholics, impressing that they must do likewise with still others. It's like the bottom paragraph said, I personally know scores of cases with whom were the type that other methods had failed completely. I've tried church, I've tried therapy, I've tried baptism. I've tried, Indian sweat lodges, which I love all of those things today. Don't get me wrong. After the spiritual experience, that was a very good thing. But before, it failed completely. But when I bring these three areas together, unity, recovery, and service, then I begin to have an awakening from self. And so that's my take on your question today, Justin. Thank you, man.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that. And I love those things, the baptism, the church, the sweat lodges, the things that I tried before as the solution that didn't work now become strengthening parts to the solution. Whereas before that, when I tried them as the solution, they weren't sufficient. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that, David. Nikki, you touched on this a little bit, but I want to go deeper. You and I, we talk quite often about process addictions. Maybe you and I aren't alcoholics of what is the stereotypical vision of an alcoholic, but these words, these letters are still very powerful to us. This doctor's letter means the same to you and me as it does to somebody who is an actual, what we consider, what we see as a stereotypical alcoholic. So Nikki, talk to us a little bit more about your insights into how this letter pertains to anybody who's struggling with any sort of addiction issue to anything.
Well, that's a wonderful question, because the other day I was actually, I'm working through it as someone who told me I don't belong in certain rooms. And, that's hard to hear when I suffered in the rooms of I'm not going to mention the fellowships, before I found the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Before someone approached me, I was in a room where they said, raise your hand if you need a sponsor. Well, I was dying. I didn't even know what a sponsor was. I was in a room that was helpful, but it was more like group therapy. And I didn't even know to look for the good in the room because no one was working steps. So what does that look like for me in the process addictions? It looks like, I'm suffering from this disease. On page 107, it talks about it, the same to the wives, to the codependent, to the anybody who suffers from this disease. It says death was often near. Sometimes there were screaming deliriums and insanity, hospitals, jails, health resorts, sanitariums. This happens to us without being drunk or sticking a needle in my arm. Or how about this? You're in the grip of a progressive illness and then you just switch your disease for sufficient reason. Some of us can stop. I had a baby and I could stop certain things, and then I picked up other things. And I'm hopeless. The things I just described, that's without getting, what is sober? It's not being intoxicated. And so I'm intoxicated on fear, on worry. I'm high as a kite, blotting out the consciousness of my existence with anything I can get my hands on. And sometimes that's just my thoughts. And so I'm beyond human aid. And as you and David have talked about, I try everything too. I just wasn't in jail like David. I just wasn't caught, David. Okay. Like, I've planned a murder in my country. That's illegal. Murder, homicide. And it wasn't a joke, because that was the only way out for me, because, I had no other place to go. So what does this look like? Where else do I relate? Other methods. Well, we talked about that, but I just love this book because, I belong. And the more I get into this book, I see that there's a chapter written for me. There's to the employers, to everybody is written in here for me, because I and what is that? We're going to talk about the body allergy soon and all that good stuff. Well, it's the same thing, that craving, that body allergy. Even the other day when I got into fear, I was red like a cartoon. I got into anger. My hands started to sweat. It's that whole allergic reaction. So I really relate to it, because another reason is I've seen what alcoholism can do, because I grew up in that type of household, and I know where it ends. It ends with someone you love taking a gun and doing things that you just can't imagine. So this affects everybody. And I'm just so grateful that I found the magic book too, because I had to throw my life away also. And that didn't include with just drinking and drugging. That included with all the process addictions, as you mentioned, Justin. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, David. All right. Before we get into a wrap up here, are there any other thoughts that either of you have before I jump into a 1 minute wrap up of your takeaway from this? Any other questions or thoughts that you have? Okay, let's do a 1 minute wrap up. David, why don't you give us a takeaway that you have from what we've read and discussed today that you will put into your life?
Well, as always, the plan of recovery is described in the book. One-on-one, one with another, whatever that may be. We absolutely have witnessed many who have returned to health, mental health, physical health, emotional health. This book works. I mean, this is, of course, it's God, and we know that. Spirit, source, whatever you want to call it, we know that. But I know that He gave us a way out through this book. I think the problem is, in most of the rooms you go into, you will see the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous on the wall. And that's a very good thing that they done. I'm not saying it's not. But where they messed up was they left the instructions on how to work each one of those inside this book. And unless you're in this book with somebody who understands it, it's almost like when I first came in, I read the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm reading it with an untreated mind. And I didn't realize that at the time. I hadn't had an awakening yet. But when someone sat down and went through this with me, then I began to wake up and see what the pages were saying to me. So my takeaway on this is there's so much here. There is so much to give. I did a 42-week series on the high road to the new freedom. It's a big book study that can be found on YouTube, Spotify. And it's just, this book is amazing. It's amazing. So thank you for letting me be able to share with you guys this. Thanks, Justin.
And thank you, David. And we'll have a link to that high road to a new freedom information there. If you want to have access to that, we'll put that in the show notes of the podcast. Nikki, give us a 1 minute wrap up of a takeaway you've had from this conversation.
Well, thank you, Justin and David. I mean, this is such a great honor to be of service. Isn't that what we do? Give so freely what was given to us. This is free service. And when you do it enthusiastically and with a whole heart, I mean, we witness our return to health. My line out says miracles. And above there, a speaker in the rooms, Teresa F. Some of you may have heard her. She always says, don't leave before the miracle happens. And we don't know when it's going to happen. I mean, we hear that all the time. And we don't know when it's going to happen. I've seen people in the room suffering for years, myself included. And then all of a sudden, someone makes the approach. And we witness our return to health. And on the next page, of course, it's a remedy. These men may well have a remedy for thousands of such situations. This is a remedy. And like you said, I couldn't find it anywhere else. So my little magic book is like a treasure map to happy, joy, and freedom on a daily reprieve, of course, when I pay the price, the dying of the self. I'm just grateful. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Nikki. And my quick takeaway is in black and white. I loved how this was delineated. These facts appear to be of extreme medical importance. I never looked back. Okay, what are the facts? I need to see what those facts are. And that really opened my eyes to a lot of things. And this, I am an alcoholic of a type that was come to regard as hopeless, that I have acquired certain ideas in this book and in this program. What a beautiful thing that makes it possible to recover, and that I get to go and do the same for others. And that's where, for me, that's where the joy, that's where the freedom, that's where the happiness comes in, is in that third part. What a beautiful thing. All right, let's wrap this up now. Thank you all for joining with us. To learn more about RICO 12 and what we're doing and how you can support these projects, go to rico12.com. To learn more about any of the other projects that David and Nikki discussed or that they're working on, we've got all of those links in the show notes of the podcast. You can follow them in the places they're at there and see and witness their experience and the miracles that they're experiencing in their recoveries. Join us in the fellowship of the Spirit and come trudge this adventurous and amazing road of happy destiny with us. Work it. You are worth it.